let's start with the prompt here. Which choice describes data from the table that supports the researcher's claim? And what is the researcher's claim? So here, a bunch of researchers examined plots within a plant community. They calculated that if individual plants were randomly distributed, only about 15% would be with other plants in patches of vegetation. They counted the number of juvenile plants of 5 species in patches of vegetation and growing alone, and they compared those numbers to what would be expected if the plants were randomly distributed, which, by the way, was already told to us to be 15%. Based on these results, they claim that the plants of these species that grow in close proximity to other plants gain an advantage at an early developmental stage. So the conclusion that was reached was when plants are close to each other, they're in close proximity, they have an advantage. And how does the data support that idea? Well, the percent of them that were found in patches of vegetation was always a number greater than 50%. And the paragraph said that if they were randomly distributed, they were expecting that 15% would be with patches of vegetation. So what they found was dramatically higher than what would be expected if it were random. And which answer says that? So let's look at A. For all 5 species, less than 75% were growing in patches of vegetation. So we're looking for a comparison to the 15%, so 75% is kind of random. B, the species with the greatest number growing in patches of vegetation was this particular one. We're not really comparing any of the species to each other, so that's kind of our problem with B. C, for these 2 plants, the percent growing in vegetation was less than what would be expected if they were randomly distributed. Well, for those 2 plants, they're mentioning this one here and this one here. They both have greater than the 15% that is expected if they were randomly distributed. So C is just factually wrong. And D, for each species, the percent of plants growing in patches of vegetation was higher than what would be expected if the plants were randomly distributed. So for all 5 of these, the numbers were all higher than 15%, which is what answer choice D is saying, and that's correct here.